Most thyroid patients believe that they will never be able to lose weight. Yet I've been able to help thousands of them lose weight over the last 9 years with some simple tweaks to their diet and lifestyle. Here's what works best for thyroid weight loss and why. Number 1, use fasting as a way to cut your calories. Do not use daily caloric restriction. Yes, you will need to keep an eye on your calories if you want to lose weight. There is no getting around that. But how you cut those calories matters. Daily calorie restriction, which just means cutting back how many calories you eat each day, is a recipe for producing something called metabolic adaptation and damage to your metabolism. This type of calorie restriction causes your metabolism to slow and your thyroid to slow at the same time. In effect, it makes long-term weight loss impossible. Yes, you might have some temporary weight loss in the beginning, but you'll always gain that weight back after a few years. But this is where fasting steps in. Intermittent caloric restriction, which is what fasting is, allows you to cut back your calories in an intermittent way without damaging your metabolism or your thyroid. And it's really easy to put yourself into a caloric deficit by simply cutting out calories for one day each week. In fact, a 24-hour fast each week will cut out roughly 280 calories when you average it out throughout the week. You need this caloric restriction if you want to lose weight, but you must do it correctly. The wrong way would be to take your daily caloric intake and just knock off 280 calories each day. The right way is to eat a completely normal diet with full amount of calories for 6 days and then do completely fast on the 7th day for 24 hours and eat nothing that day. This small change, even though it roughly equates to be the same if you average it out through the week, makes a huge difference on your ability to lose weight and on your thyroid function long term. The bottom line, do not restrict your calories, but do fast for 24 hours once a week. And by the way, this is probably the cheapest form of weight loss that exists, because when you fast, you don't even have to spend money on food. Number 2, make sure that you are using Zone 2 training as your preferred and primary form of exercise. The intensity at which you exercise has a profound effect on your thyroid. In fact, researchers have looked at different people and had them exercise at different levels of intensity. They then took those people and looked at what happened to their thyroid, and here's what they found. Almost all levels of exercise have a benefit on thyroid function, but one level of intensity stood above the rest in terms of its benefits on thyroid function. And as you can probably guess, it's called Zone 2 training. Not only does it rev up your thyroid, but it's also the intensity at which your body burns the most fat. So if you are trying to exercise for thyroid weight loss, you need to spend as much time as possible in this zone. But let me be clear on what it is and what it isn't. Zone 2 training is not a type of exercise. It is a level of intensity that can be obtained through many forms and types of exercise. And you'll know if you're in this Zone 2 range because your heart rate will be about 60 to 70% of your maximum rate. The best way to know if you're there is to obviously track your heart rate with some sort of wearable device. If you don't want to do that, you can roughly guess that you're in this zone by assessing how easy it is to have a conversation with someone when you exercise. If you are able to hold a conversation like I'm talking to you right now, you're probably in that zone. If it's hard for you to talk and exercise at the same time, your heart rate is probably too high. The only downside to Zone 2 training for thyroid patients is that you have to spend a fair amount of time there. And the magic number for thyroid patients is about 100 minutes each week. This is just the starting recommendation though, because your goal should be to work up to 180 minutes or 3 hours a week. When you train in Zone 2, you put less stress and pressure on your thyroid and adrenals. And this makes this form of exercise sustainable long term. My personal recommendation if you want to get into Zone 2 is to simply walk. Walking by itself is probably not going to be enough, but if you walk at an incline or if you add weight to yourself, you'll likely boost your intensity up to where you need it to be. If you use a treadmill, then 3 miles an hour with a 15% incline is usually enough to get you there. If you want to walk on a flat surface or outside, then add on a 12 or 15 pound weighted vest and that should be sufficient. The bottom line, use exercise as a way to burn more calories and to boost your thyroid, not as a way to make up for an unhealthy lifestyle. Number 3, you need to make sure that you're eating enough carbohydrates. Make sure you don't restrict. Restricting carbohydrates is one of the worst things you can do for your thyroid. And in a world filled with diets like the carnivore diet and the keto diet, this is a very common thyroid pitfall. No, carbohydrates are not essential for you to live, but they are necessary for optimal thyroid function. This is probably why we see a decline in TSH and body temperature in long-term users of the keto and carnivore diets. But don't take this information as a green light to go out there and start pounding down refined and processed forms of carbohydrates. These are not the type of carbs that you want to be eating. Instead, I'm talking about real whole food sources of carbs, which includes things like veggies, fruits, and 100% fruit juices. Your goal should be to get 100 grams of carbs from these sources every day. And by the way, this 100 gram recommendation happens to align perfectly with the amount of carbs you would be eating if you got your 4 to 5 servings of fruit each day anyway. I've personally lost count of the number of thyroid patients who have started with low carb diets and have seen some early success, but several months down the line have found that they are now dealing with a sluggish thyroid, a reduction in metabolism, low body temperature, and generalized fatigue. If this has happened to you, these are all signs that your low carb diet is probably negatively impacting your thyroid. All that said, there is a time and a place to cut your carbs as a thyroid patient if you want to lose weight. But long-term carbohydrate restriction is not recommended if you want sustained and long-term weight loss. If you must go low carb for whatever reason, the best way to do this is by only going low carb for about 2 to 3 months at a time, and then going back up on your carbohydrates to this 100 gram recommendation. From there, you can cycle in between low carb and normal carb as needed. Number 4, you need to make sure that you're eating enough protein because muscle building must be your goal. If there's one macronutrient you aren't getting enough of, I can almost promise you it's protein. Your muscle mass represents a huge percentage of your total body composition, and it also happens to be a major site of thyroid hormone activity. This means by building more muscle mass, you are necessarily increasing thyroid hormone action. And the downstream effects of this are more calories burned at rest, more energy production just living your life, more heat production, and faster and better weight loss. There are 2 key things that you must remember if you want this to be a reality. First, you must eat enough protein. And there's a right way to do this and a wrong way to do this. The wrong way is to make a lighthearted attempt at increasing your protein intake by just trying to eat foods that you think are high in protein. This is not a recipe for success, and I can almost guarantee that you are not as accurate as you think at eyeballing the approximate amount of proteins in any given food. Thyroid patients who do this will undereat on protein and severely overestimate their protein intake. The right way to ensure that you are getting this 100 grams of quality protein each day is to either weigh out your protein and your food, or use the hand measurement system. For best results and to get the best stimulus on your muscles, make sure that every time you eat protein, you're eating about 30 grams. The second thing you need to do on top of this is to make sure you are putting strain on your muscles. In a practical sense, this means that you must be lifting weights at least once a week. If this sounds daunting to you, your cheat code is going to be protein powder. Just 2 servings of protein powder each day will get you up to 40 grams of that 100 gram recommendation very quickly. And this means all you need to do is get the remaining 60 grams to get up to that 100. If you do these 4 things, you will not have to use a GLP-1 agonist to lose weight or spend thousands of dollars on other weight loss therapies. And by the way, if you're trying to lose weight, make sure that you don't fall into these common thyroid weight loss pitfalls that can stall your progress. So make sure you check out this video next.